So we're kicking off this 2-day virtual CXFS event with a most useful panel, winning the argument for building better brands through better customer experience. Today's consumer expects a seamless experience with brand consistency at every touch point. It's a simple idea, but one not always so easily conveyed to your senior management. In order to develop a superior end-to-end consumer experience, it is imperative to have the full support and buy-in from all stakeholders across the organization. So the very big question is, how do you do it? Today, I'm joined with two amazing CX design leaders who have successfully campaigned to perfect the customer journey at their own organizations. So first, let's meet them, and then we'll get down to business. Andrew.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me. It's an honor to hang with y'all for today.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. No worries. No worries. So I'm a design executive. I've been doing this for better part of 2 decades. My LinkedIn profile has some pretty awesome asterisks behind it: Northwestern Mutual, Olympics, GE, Bloomberg. But just the net is like, I love leveraging design to solve complex business challenges, and I'm really excited to get into this topic today. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Amy?
Oh, thank you for inviting me. Yeah, thank you for inviting me to this conversation. It's really exciting. And Andrew, it's good to connect with you again. I too have been in marketing for quite a few decades. Started out in direct mail of all places. Didn't know what direct mail was when I started that job. And learned about the customer experience from a print perspective, and then moved into digital when everything was evolving into emails and how else can we reach customers, and digital is where I am today, learning more about the customer and sharing my learnings and talking to others in the same industry to help move the business forward.
Awesome. So as the CX design leaders within your organizations, how do you get across the importance and economic value of customer experience? And Amy, let's have you start off.
Sure. So, wow, customer experience, that's something that everybody says in all of our meetings, right? Whether we're launching a campaign or it's like a quarterly catch up, an email from our leadership teams, it's, we're very focused on the customer experience. And here we have some loose analytics that we have access to show us that maybe we're moving the needle a little bit. And being a part of marketing for so many decades, I've seen those emails, I've been a part of those conversations. I've also used the words customer experience in all of my meetings, but it really comes down to, do we truly understand what we're doing for the customer? Maybe we're so internal, we're so used to the lingo that we were just covered with, oh, we just got to get this campaign out the door. We just need to do this massive migration, or we need to do a rebranding. Then the customer is definitely going to come to our site and they're going to look for the things that they need. Like if we focus on these bigger things from other vendors, then we'll meet the mark and we'll come back next year and we'll celebrate and we'll move on and do something else. One of the things I did to sort of rein it in from those higher level objectives, leading a massive CMS migration is, I said to my boss, give me a little bit of leeway. I want to take a huge step back before I kick off this meeting and before I kick off this project with multiple stakeholders. Pulled them into a room, incredibly nervous, because I was about to approach them with a very simple exercise. I want us to come together before we start this massive project that's tied to a huge budget. I want us to understand what our internal value proposition is. I know what the leadership team is telling us. I know what we're supposed to say when someone asks us a question, but I want us to take a step back. We're going to do a very basic SWOT analysis. We're going to have some fun and we're going to look at competitors. And as a team across multiple departments, we're going to write a value proposition. We're going to hang it up in our cubicles. Again, this was pre-pandemic, but we're going to know what that value proposition is so that when we are marching into these campaigns and rebrands and, a CMS migration, we're all beating to the same drum that we agreed upon, right? Not just something that we read in a massive email, but having that internal value prop is so important, because then you ask that question when you're getting those projects that fall in your lap on top of your day-to-day job. So I really dialed it back and wanted to start from square one to get everyone aligned. So I find that internal value prop, outside of everything else that falls onto your desk, is extremely important.
Just a +1 on that. I mean, that's great, Amy. It's just the internal alignment is such a huge thing. I mean, and you're in the marketing funnel, and my funnel is the design and product aspect of this. That alignment is just so critical. And this comes not just at my job here, but when I talk to other design leaders too. It's just having those alignment meetings or those alignment conversations on all levels. Because one of the problems that I see is just articulating the value of what design does. That's probably the biggest thing that I see. So aside my day job, I also do executive coaching for design product leaders. Comes up all the time. It's articulating the value. There's a lot of tools and frameworks in place, but one of the best ones, and I've been using this since my time at GE, it's called an unbroken chain of why. What that does is it codifies the value of what you are providing to the rest of the org. Unbroken chains of why really good. We have them at GE. Most of the consulting companies I've hired, they've had their version of it, and Northwestern Mutual, all over the place. It has the unfortunate acronym of a UCAL, but don't let that hold you back. But what it does is it codifies everything that you bring to the table. The business theory behind it is that executive leadership will give design just miles of runway, as long as they know that you are 100% aligned to what the business is trying to do. It does it in a very strategic way. These UCALs, from a very high level of here's the design business unit, and here's the specific value it provides, and then all the way down to the granular level of okay, here is an experience that design has elevated with call centers that saves X amount of dollars every quarter. So it's this full top to bottom, and it focuses the business unit on outcomes, not output. So the added bonus to this one is the design BU is positioned as a strategic partner rather than just simply executional against pixels. So that alignment thing is just great. And UCALs are a really fantastic tool for just getting the business value of what you do front and center.
Completely agree.
So how do you go about educating your stakeholders and other organizational leaders about the transformations or the needed updates that you're talking about?
Randy, that's a tough word.
Can we pause a little bit on the education word? Amy, does that come up with you? Okay.
No, I don't ever say that. Ever, ever, ever.
Okay, what's the right word? What do we do? What'd I say?
All right. So here's the challenge, is that we're all executives, we're all leaders here. And if you're going to tell someone with an MBA that you're about to educate them, that might be inherently problematic or adding more complexity to the conversation than you really need to have happen. A technique that I use, I'm totally stealing this from this design leader I used to work with. You want to talk about your work same way a plastic surgeon does. A plastic surgeon doesn't go up to people and say, yo, you're ugly. Plastic surgeon does really good work. And then people see the good work and they find out the plastic surgeon, or the person who gets the work done, they're oh, I have really great plastic surgeon. So when you're coming from a point of added value and you're making situations better, they will come to you. In the aspect of educating, I just go to data, because data is super hard to argue with. If you come with spreadsheets and you do your homework about, why the designs of the marketing capabilities are the right things, it's really hard to push back on that. One of the first things I did when I got to Northwestern Mutual was we launched design principles, which I think every company should have. And your designing experience, you need to do this, because it's a really easy way to ensure consistent experiences across the entire enterprise. Design principles, they shouldn't be cliche. They should be aligned to the brand, the values of the company, and your strategic differentiators. Those three things are really kind of critical. And what we did, which is a nice piece of innovation, is we actually added a heuristic to each of the principles that we had. It's just 1 through 4. 1, are we meeting customers' expectations? 2, are we exceeding? 3 is that an actual human-centered impact. And 4, which is great, will our customers feel different about the brand? And it's just 1 through 4. But when you attach that to each one of the principles that you're doing, you get to have a conversation that is away from like the HIPPO's, the highest paid person's opinion. And it's just more like strategic on the actual value it is. So the conversations are not about like the color of the blue button. It's like, okay, cool. What principle are you at odds with? And let's talk about this. And like, what level? Is it not meeting customers' expectations the way you want it to be? And how can we address that? So I think those are like really great tools to have when you're having the education conversation.
Not education.
What are your thoughts?
No, I completely agree. So, in meetings, you're so eager to share best practices, right? Like when I'm sitting down to a campaign meeting, I already have an idea of what they want to bring to the table, what they want to execute. There's a banner, there's social media, there's email. And it's, they just want to dive right into that marketing plan. And then that's where I want to stop and say, okay, this is a lot. It's a bit of fire hose of information, and we're just hoping it sticks and stays out there until the budget runs out. And then I don't know, at the end of the year, what are we tying this to? Are we actually tying it to revenue? So what I'm suggesting, similar to what you did, Andrew, is this came out in a backwards way, but I used it in my conversations with marketing to help with the educating best practices, et cetera. So back when I was working at Legg Mason, I managed the US website as one of the websites, and we had a new functionality added to the site called a carousel, which many people are familiar with. It's movable, it gives some depth, you can put a ton of stuff in it. When we created this enhancement, it was meant to just liven up the page a little bit and bring our campaigns to life for people coming to the homepage. Very quickly, it turned into, well, how many can we get? Can we get 6 in there? And I was thinking, 6? We're going to put all of our stories into one carousel? Well, yes, we are, Amy. We're absolutely going to do that. So we had this carousel. I had to report on the data for an entire year. It was not the most fun part of my job to go in and let all these leaders know slides number 2 through 6 really aren't getting any traction. And slide 1, we need to rotate more, right? Like if we're not changing it twice a week, what are we doing? So what we did is we decided from this carousel test that we needed to have pillars to tie it back to, right? So our pillars were going to be, what is the story about Legg Mason? What are the products we're highlighting? So there's usually a few products every quarter that are getting the traction that financial professionals are talking about. So one of those pillars was dedicated to a product or strategy or a solution. What is the campaign in market? What are the portfolio managers talking about? So we agreed upon 6 pillars, which were tied to this carousel, but very easily from that one conversation, I thought these 6 pillars should be shared across marketing, not just from a carousel perspective, but what are the 6 pillars that we should follow quarter to quarter? What are we focused on? So maybe talking about the entire year is too much to talk about, right? And those 6 things would change quite often. So I sat down with marketing and I said, we have this carousel, it has to be tied to 6 pillars. I need your help with content strategy because I'm the one who has to update it. But more importantly, as you're growing out your campaigns and as we're looking at enhancements to the website and growing digital, and reaching that customer experience, how are we going to tie everything back to one of these 6 pillars, right? So we have our internal value prop, but now that we have to do the work and talk to sales and talk to the analytics team, talk to marketing automation, are we all aligned on these 6 pillars so that we know the work we're doing is leading towards something, right? Rather than this is just my BAU for today. This is all I'm focused on today. I don't see it in a bigger picture. Having those 6 pillars sort of allowed us to raise our hands in meetings and say, wait, is this tied to what we all thought we were going to be doing 2 months ago? Or should we adjust it and share that? Like be very transparent with everyone that you're working with. That way there's no surprises or gaps in analytic reporting later.
So now that you have shared data and you have gotten everybody on board, you've got the buy-in from the stakeholders, how do you align strategy across all of your channels?
I used to bring food to meetings. I thought that was the easiest way to get buy-in. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way in the pandemic. No. Well, that did help. Pulling stakeholders in. So, working in different organizations, silos are common. People are in their roles for 10 to 15 years. Then you have new hires and everyone works a little bit differently. And it takes a lot of those in the departments to really pull together and say, okay, I think I should invite so-and-so to the call, or I think I should include social media. I think this campaign would have social, so let me just invite that team. I did that in my role at like Mason, and I do that now at Franklin Templeton, where it might be a smaller group and it's like, you know what? I'd rather invite the entire team to the table. Let's talk out what we're trying to do. And then if it's not pertinent to them or they're not needed for this campaign or this initiative, more than happily, please drop off. But my goal in all of my meetings and the CMS migrations that I'm leading is full transparency. You will always know what else is happening with the other regions. You will know what the blockers are from day to day, and I will tell you what's going on with all of the campaigns in market. And I find that open communication and inviting others to meetings that could have just been a miss, people aren't sure who to invite, when everyone's home or mostly remote, sometimes you just forget who's in what team and you're just so focused on that end goal. Like maybe you could have had 4 or 5 more stakeholders that could have added value. I do that. I'm more than happy to bring people in and just hash it out because everyone's a subject matter expert in their role. So I feel that they would definitely offer value, and I do it quite often and sort of create like bigger teams to say like, this is the core working team on this project. This is the core working team on this campaign. And once people feel included, they feel trusted and valued, then they're more apt to share back and forth.
Andrew, are you also bringing food to meetings?
No, but I just want to say, Amy, like you're awesome. Like I totally want to work with you at some point in my career. Like the way your approach.
We're gonna take this on tour. We're totally gonna.
We're gonna go on tour. That's fantastic. I was like, no, so I'll go back a little bit. So when I was at GE, I was on the CMOS team, and part of my remit was to elevate the level of design. Full stop, which is slightly terrifying. Like at the time, GE was like a Fortune 10 and there were like 330,000 employees, which is like a lot. So the design function, cross-functional, it was globally distributed. So we couldn't, bring food to everybody. That didn't really work. But it was like a working team horizontally and vertically of like over 800 people. So it's like, how do you get buy-in and align strategy with that? It's crazy, but some things that worked when I did it was like what he was saying, constant communication. Just make sure there's transparency, everybody's aware of what's going on. I also had regular conference calls with everybody on, which is probably one of the largest conference calls you would ever imagine being on, but it gave everyone a voice and the idea to co-create with it. And you also leverage all the other platforms. Like at the time we were beta testing Slack for enterprise. So this is way back when, but we also had like various other platforms where people can contribute and bring the voice in. So what I had to do as kind of the leader of this very large, globally distributed cross-functional team was to make sure everybody was clear about what the outcomes are. Mm-hmm. And right at the time, GE was going through a digital transformation. I was leading a rebrand that was going out. Like there was a lot of like big swinging, like tent pole things across the enterprise. And like when everybody's aligned on the outcomes, like your job just gets easier. So you can entrust people to, when you provide them with like freedom and a framework, like I'm going to give you what you need to do, but we kind of have to stick within like, these parameters, like it just works better. And there's some really good research on this one too. It's a team of teams approach where the people closest to the problems will be able to solve it better. And at GE, there were 14 tier 1 businesses that were like over $1 billion, but it's like you have transportation, aviation, you have digital, you have healthcare, all of these different groups and silos all have to solve different problems. But like when you give them the freedom and a framework and you're communicating constantly and you give everyone a platform to voice, like you get alignment, you make sure everybody's strategically connected to each other and you actually get to your goals quicker. So I'm like, I co-sign everything Amy just said. And I think like with a couple of these strategies in place, doesn't matter what size your org is, you can do some really good work.
And Andrew, I bet you they loved feeling trusted to just run with it, right? Like here are the rails, go. You have my permission, come back, let us know if you hit any blockers. When people are given that responsibility and they know in a huge program that they're sort of in charge of their subject, they're thrilled. They want to come back and report on, this is what I saw, this is a blocker we had, and this is what we came to. And they want to deliver it to the larger team. That really makes it harmonious when people feel trusted.
Sorry, please continue.
No, I was done.
I was getting excited. I mean, like to the people listening to us talk right now, like, you have talented people on your teams. Let them do what they do, and giving them the autonomy and the freedom to, make these decisions on behalf of the customers. 9 out of 10 times, you're going to get a better result.
Absolutely.
Very nice. So both of you work for these very large organizations, and how do you ensure that there's continuity across all of the touch points?
That's interesting. I think, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this a little bit more. It's like understanding like the why of things are important. Like if I were to break this down into a strategy, I think one, you need a very clear CX vision. Second, you need a strategic multi-year product roadmap. You need to empower your teams to make the right decisions. And lastly, you need to just get the hell out of their way. It's just let them do what they need to do best. Like when you have a clear vision, like everyone needs to know like where they're going. It's like, okay, we're all together, we're all in silos or various parts of the org. Like we all need to have that destination in mind. The product roadmap and making sure it's multi-year, like everyone in financial services, we're working with a lifetime of a client. And especially if you're doing like a mutual or anything like that, not only is it the lifetime of that client, it's generational. It's like their kids. So you need to think really long and really wide. And then empowering to make the right decisions. Again, like that they're super talented about stuff and getting the hell out of their way. Again, you're going to get to that destination quicker. Amy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think being very transparent about that roadmap is key, right? Like people hear about it, and in all of my roles, I've been told, that roadmap, what is it really? Like that's a roadmap that's never going to happen. It's a backlog. And that's when I started to say, we don't call it a backlog, we call it a roadmap, and this is what we're going to do. So specific to the CMS migration I'm leading now, it's complete transparency and agreement to what we're doing for day one, what are the expectations, and having all the regions in that conversation. And then this is what we'd like to tackle day two in that roadmap, and let's all sign off on it together. Let's take a global approach, which can be hard because regions have very specific needs. But again, I find inviting those people to the meeting, when they feel heard, all of the defense comes down. And when they're asked to weigh in and sign off on something, sure, it's going to be a little bit of back and forth. It might take a few more meetings than we've all expected, but when they sign off, they feel like they're a key partner, right? And then you execute against that. And it's a lot of conversations, willing to set aside time. Doesn't matter what your day-to-day is, right? Like Andrew, you're probably addressing multiple fire drills, and you're like, all right, I need to pivot and now talk to these teams so they make sure like they're heard and they're part of this master project.
Yeah, I mean, I just to plus one on the multi-year strategic plan, like those aren't set in stone, but they need to be directionally accurate. Like our plan, like plans from a year ago, and every single person listening to us now changed when COVID happened.
Yeah.
Like you needed to be able to be flexible, but still kind of know directionally where you're going, because who would think that the world would stay home, or planes would stop flying, or healthcare would need as much support as possible? Like you can't predict those things, but you can be prepared for them. So I just really great insights all around on this.
Completely agree.
So actually, you're talking about COVID, are these large roadmaps, these are the things that will help you circumvent any large issues such as a worldwide pandemic?
Well, I don't know about circumventing, because every company is going to have different challenges, but it gives you a map to pivot or persevere. It's like, all right, cool. Like we know that the world stopped. Are we going to pivot and try something else? Or are we going to persevere with like these three focused things that we know we can place all of our bets on as an enterprise? So it's about having those thoughtful conversations, but you can't have those conversations if you don't have the direction of where you're going. Like, Amy, is that consistent with your world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of those conversations were happening, and I was very lucky to be part of a team that was very transparent and had a leader that would come to us after all of these senior leader meetings saying like, this is what the company's thinking, this is what we're going to start focusing on. So I had other stakeholders and other teams, right, reaching out saying, what are you hearing? And I found that communication was the most important thing. Everyone was willing to jump in and work on different marketing campaigns and focus on the portfolio managers and what they had to say about the pandemic. But key every day was, Amy, what are you hearing? Like, we're not getting that broader message. So, my leader gave me permission to share. And so I shared, I said, this is what's happening right now. This is what's on deck. This is what we're looking at changing. This is what I'm working on. clean, clear communication, always being transparent, I feel leads to the best results that you can have.
Well, that's perfect. And it's such a lot of insight. And I thank you both for your time and such a fascinating way to kick off this event. So thank you so much. Thanks.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you,
And I
man.
hope everybody
Thanks.
enjoys the rest of the event.
Yeah, absolutely.
And stay tuned for our next panel.